My beloved child, pause here for a moment, because this message was meant to reach the part of your heart that has been asking a question you rarely say aloud. Do not rush past these words. Something has been changing inside the person connected to your heart, and the truth they have been trying to hide from you is becoming harder for them to hide from themselves. Your soulmate is in love with you. But before you allow those words to become the answer to every question you have carried, listen carefully, because this is not simply a message about someone secretly missing you. In this cinematic spiritual reflection, imagine that the person you have been thinking about has reached an emotional point they never expected to reach. They have tried distracting themselves. They have tried becoming practical. They have told themselves that whatever exists between you will eventually become easier to ignore. But something happened recently that destroyed that illusion. They realized that no matter how much distance they create, there is one place where they cannot escape you, their own heart. And now there is something they desperately wish you understood. Something they almost told you before. Something they have rehearsed silently more times than you could imagine. My beloved child, they need you to hear this. Their silence was never the complete truth. There were moments when you believed their distance answered everything. You thought, if they truly cared, wouldn't they say something? Wouldn't they make an effort? Wouldn't they choose me clearly? Those were fair questions. Your soulmate knows that now. They are beginning to understand that feelings hidden behind silence cannot give another person security. They know you could not read their mind. You could not see what happened when they were alone. You could not hear the conversations they had with themselves after walking away from you. All you had were their actions, and sometimes those actions made you believe that what you felt between you existed only in your imagination. But my child, imagine what was happening on the other side. They would create distance, believing distance would calm their emotions. Then they would miss you. They would decide not to contact you, then repeatedly check their phone. They would tell themselves to move forward, then hear something that reminded them of you. They would meet people, have conversations, live ordinary days, and somehow your memory kept returning. At first they called it attachment. Then nostalgia. Then unfinished emotion. They used every word except the one that frightened them most. Love. And my beloved child, the moment they finally admitted that word to themselves was not romantic. It was painful. They were alone. There was no audience. Nobody was asking them about you. Something simple reminded them of your presence, a memory, an old conversation, perhaps something you once said that suddenly carried a different meaning. They remembered the way you tried to understand them when they could not even understand themselves. They remembered how you noticed changes in their energy before they explained anything. They remembered moments when your patience gave them space to be imperfect. Then they remembered the distance between you now. And suddenly a thought appeared, what if I never experienced that kind of connection again? They tried pushing the thought away. But another followed. What if I already had something real and fear made me treat it like something temporary? That question broke through their defenses. They began replaying everything. The first time they realized they enjoyed talking to you more than they expected. The first time your absence affected their mood. The first moment jealousy appeared and they pretended it didn't. The moment they almost told you how deeply they cared. The moment fear convinced them to remain silent. My child, your soulmate began recognizing a pattern. Every time the connection became emotionally real, they found a reason to retreat. Maybe they called it bad timing. Maybe they blamed circumstances. Maybe they convinced themselves they needed to focus on other things. But beneath those explanations lived something simpler. They were afraid. Not necessarily afraid of you. Afraid of what loving you required from them. Love meant vulnerability. Love meant being seen. Love meant allowing another person to matter enough that losing them could hurt. And somewhere in their past, your soulmate learned that emotional control felt safer than emotional surrender. So when you entered their life and began reaching places they normally kept hidden, their first instinct was not always to move closer. Sometimes it was to run. My beloved child, this is important because their fear may explain their behavior, but it does not automatically excuse it. Your heart deserved communication. You deserved clarity. Your soulmate is finally beginning to understand this. They had assumed that because they knew what they felt, somehow you should have known too. They believed their small gestures were enough. They thought you would understand the meaning behind certain looks, conversations, or moments. But eventually they realized something uncomfortable. You cannot build security from clues. You cannot build trust from guessing. And you cannot ask someone to believe in love you continuously hide from them. That realization changed your soulmate. They began seeing the connection through your eyes. Imagine them replaying a moment when they became distant after being unusually close to you. From their perspective, they were overwhelmed and needed time. But what did you see? Someone pulling away. Imagine them remembering when they wanted to tell you they missed you but refused because pride told them not to appear vulnerable. What did you receive? Silence. Imagine them remembering the times they checked your messages repeatedly but deliberately waited before responding because they wanted to appear unaffected. What did you experience? Confusion. For the first time, your soulmate began understanding the emotional difference between intention and impact. And then came regret. My silence probably made them believe I didn't care. That thought stayed with them. They remembered how your energy gradually changed. You stopped asking as many questions. You stopped trying to understand every mixed signal. You became quieter. At first, your soulmate convinced themselves you were losing interest. But now they see something else. Perhaps you were tired. Perhaps you realized that continually searching for reassurance was costing you peace. Perhaps you understood that even if their feelings were real, you could not continue carrying the entire emotional weight of the connection. And my child, something strange happened when you stopped chasing clarity. Your soulmate finally started chasing it inside themselves. They began asking the questions you had once asked. What is this? Why does this person matter so much? Why can't I let this go? What do I actually want? The answers became increasingly difficult to avoid. They wanted you. But wanting you frightened them because wanting you meant admitting they had something to lose. Then another realization arrived. They may already have lost part of what they once had. Your emotional availability was no longer guaranteed. That changed everything. My beloved child, there was a night when your soulmate considered contacting you. They opened your name and stared at the screen. They began typing. "Can we talk?" Then deleted it. They tried. "I've been thinking about you." Deleted again. Then. "There is something I need to explain." Again they erased the words. Not because they did not mean them. Because every sentence seemed too small for everything they were carrying. How could they explain months of silence in one message? How could they tell you that while appearing detached, they had been emotionally fighting themselves? How could they say, "I love you," without hearing the obvious question? "Then why didn't you show me?" That question terrified them because they knew you would have every right to ask it. And they did not yet have an answer they were proud of. My child, this is where their internal transformation began. Instead of asking only, "How do I get this person back?" they began asking something more mature. How do I become someone who can handle this connection differently? That distinction matters. Because longing does not automatically create change. Missing someone does not automatically create maturity. Even love itself does not guarantee healthy behavior. Your soulmate had to confront whether they were willing to communicate when afraid instead of disappearing. Whether they were willing to tell you the truth when the truth made them vulnerable. Whether they could respect your boundaries instead of treating them as rejection. Whether they could show consistency instead of expecting one emotional confession to repair everything. And my beloved child, these questions stayed with them because somewhere inside, they knew that if they approached you again, you might not respond to words the way you once did. You would watch behavior. That frightened them. But it also challenged them. Then something happened recently that pushed them closer to action. Someone mentioned you. It happened unexpectedly. Your soulmate tried acting normal when your name entered the conversation, but their expression changed before they could control it. The person noticed. "You still care about them, don't you?" Your soulmate avoided the question. The person smiled slightly and asked again. "No. Seriously. Do you love them?" Silence. Your soulmate looked away. For several seconds, they searched for the safe answer. "I don't know. It's complicated. We haven't talked. Anything except the truth." But this time something inside them was tired of hiding. They finally said quietly, "Yes." The word surprised even them. Yes. They loved you. They had known it emotionally, but hearing themselves say it aloud changed something. The person asked the obvious question. "Then why aren't you telling them?" Your soulmate had no answer. They gave explanations. Timing. Fear. Distance. Past mistakes. Uncertainty about how you feel. The other person listened. Then they said something your soulmate has not been able to forget. What if they're waiting for honesty, not perfection? My beloved child, that sentence followed them home. Honesty, not perfection. Your soulmate realized that they had spent so much time waiting to become completely fearless before approaching you that they never considered the possibility that courage does not require fear to disappear. Courage means speaking truth while fear is still present. They began thinking about you differently. Maybe you never expected them to have everything figured out. Maybe you simply wanted them to stop making you guess. That realization made them pick up their phone again. They opened your conversation. This time they did not immediately type. They looked at old messages. Some made them smile. Some hurt. Then they found one that stopped them. A message from you. Something you had written during a difficult moment. You had essentially told them that you did not need perfect answers, you only needed honesty. Your soulmate stared at those words. The person they had spoken with earlier had unknowingly repeated almost exactly what you once tried to tell them. Honesty, not perfection. Suddenly everything connected. My child, they understood. You had not been asking them to promise forever. You had been asking them to tell the truth about today. You were not demanding certainty. You were asking for sincerity. And they had been so afraid of failing you in the future that they failed to communicate with you in the present. They closed their eyes. Regret moved through them. Then they began typing. I owe you an honest conversation. They stopped. This time they did not delete it. Another sentence appeared. I know my actions may have made you believe I didn't care. Their heart began racing. Then. The truth is almost the opposite, and that's what scared me. They stared at the screen. My beloved child, they were getting closer. But there was something else they needed you to know. Something they had never admitted. Their feelings for you had affected a decision they made recently. A serious decision. They had been offered an opportunity to move in a direction that could create even more distance between you. Perhaps a change in lifestyle, location, relationship, or future plan. On the surface, accepting it made perfect sense. But when they imagined that future, one thought kept appearing. What about them? You. They tried ignoring the question. But they couldn't. That was when your soulmate understood the depth of what they felt. You were influencing the way they imagined their future even while absent from their present. And suddenly they realized they could no longer continue making major decisions while pretending their heart had no opinion. They needed to know whether the connection between you was truly finished. Not because they wanted to interrupt your peace. Not because you owed them another chance. But because they could no longer tolerate allowing fear to answer a question only honesty could answer. My child, they finished writing the message. Their thumb hovered over send. They imagined every possible response. Maybe you would answer immediately. Maybe you would wait. Maybe you would tell them they were too late. Maybe you would say you had been waiting to hear those words. They had no guarantee. But for once, they were beginning to accept that love does not come with guarantees. They were about to press send when their phone vibrated. Another message arrived. It was from the person who had asked whether they loved you. Your soulmate opened it. The message said, before you contact them, there's something about them you need to know. Your soulmate's heart dropped. They typed. What? The response did not arrive immediately. 30 seconds. A minute. Then finally. I heard something today. I don't know if it's true, but if it is, you may not have as much time as you think. Your soulmate sat completely still. Time? What did that mean? They immediately called. The person answered. What happened? Your soulmate asked. There was hesitation on the other end. Then came the words that changed the entire situation. Someone else had apparently entered your world. Someone had noticed your heart. Someone who was not hiding their interest. Your soulmate became silent. The unfinished confession remained open on their screen. Suddenly every day they had wasted waiting felt heavier. But then the person on the phone added. That's not the biggest thing. Your soulmate swallowed. What is? Another pause. What I heard is that they haven't said yes to this person. Your soulmate's breathing changed. Why? And my beloved child, the answer was something your soulmate was completely unprepared to hear. The person said. Because apparently there's still someone they haven't completely forgotten. Silence. Your soulmate knew immediately who they meant. They looked at your name on the screen. Their unfinished confession. Their heart. Everything they had avoided. And for the first time, they realized the door between you might not be closed. But it was no longer wide open either. If they wanted to walk toward you, they would finally have to do what they had been afraid to do from the beginning. Tell you everything. Not half the truth. Not another vague message. Everything. And my beloved child, there is one confession they are preparing to make that even the person who knows them best has never heard. A confession about the exact moment they realized they were in love with you. A moment involving something you did without realizing they were watching. Something they have remembered ever since. And when you hear what happened in that moment, you may finally understand why, despite every attempt to run from this connection, your soulmate could never completely let you go. My beloved child, there is a reason that one memory has never left your soulmate, and tonight I want you to imagine them finally allowing themselves to return to it without running away from what it means. They had just heard that you may not have completely forgotten someone from your past, and immediately their heart knew who they hoped that person was. But hope frightened them. They did not want to build another fantasy from assumptions. They had spent too much time doing that already. So instead of rushing toward you with another vague message, they sat quietly with the confession they had been preparing, and suddenly their mind returned to the exact moment when their feelings for you stopped being something they could easily dismiss. My beloved child, it was not the moment they first saw you. It was not necessarily your most romantic conversation. It was something much smaller, something you probably did without realizing they were paying attention. They saw the way you treated someone when there was nothing for you to gain. Perhaps someone was struggling, embarrassed, ignored, or simply having a difficult day. You could have walked past. Instead, you noticed. You listened. You showed kindness without turning it into a performance. Your soulmate watched you, and something shifted inside them. They had already been attracted to you. They already enjoyed your presence. But in that moment, they saw your heart. And a thought appeared that frightened them because it felt too serious, too soon, too real. This is the kind of person I could actually fall in love with. They immediately tried to dismiss it. Yet from that day forward, something changed. They no longer saw you as merely someone interesting. They began imagining what it would feel like to have you permanently in their life. That was the secret behind many of their later contradictions. The connection had become meaningful before they were emotionally prepared for meaning. They started noticing everything. The way you remembered details about people. The way your energy changed when something mattered to you. The moments when you tried to appear strong even though they could sense something was hurting. They noticed your imperfections too, my child, and strangely those imperfections made the connection feel more real rather than less valuable. You were not some perfect image inside their imagination. You were human. You could become frustrated. You could misunderstand. You could have difficult days. You could protect yourself when you felt uncertain. Yet even through those things, your soulmate kept feeling drawn toward the person underneath. That was when fear became stronger. Because attraction is easy to dismiss. Emotional recognition is harder. They started wondering what would happen if you truly became part of their life. What if they disappointed you? What if they opened themselves completely and you eventually changed your mind? What if you saw the parts of them they had spent years hiding and decided those parts were too complicated? They began preparing for heartbreak before a relationship had even fully begun. And without realizing it, they started creating the very distance they were afraid of experiencing. My beloved child, now they can see it. They can look backward and recognize that some of the moments when they seemed least interested were actually moments when their emotions were strongest. After a particularly meaningful conversation, they might become quieter. After feeling unusually close to you, they might take longer to reach out. When they noticed themselves becoming jealous, they would pretend not to care. They believed controlling their behavior would control their feelings. It didn't. Their heart continued moving toward you while their actions sometimes moved in the opposite direction. And eventually you became confused. You could feel something real, but you could not build your life around something that existed only in unspoken moments. Your soulmate knows that now. They know they placed you in an impossible position. Trust what you feel, even when what I show you contradicts it. My child, nobody deserves to live permanently inside that uncertainty. And your soulmate has finally stopped pretending that their fear made the situation fair. That is why the confession they are preparing now sounds different from everything they almost sent before. They do not want to simply say, "I miss you." They know missing you does not repair anything. They do not want to say, "I never stopped caring," because they know you may reasonably ask why that care was so difficult to see. They want to tell you the complete truth. They want to say, "I became afraid when I realized how much you mattered. I thought distance would protect me, but all it did was hurt both of us. I expected you to understand what I refused to explain. And I know that was unfair." My beloved child, those words have been forming inside them because something about your absence has taught them what your presence could not. When you were available, they focused on the fear of losing themselves in love. When you stepped back, they discovered the fear of losing you was greater. There is one particular night they have never told you about. It happened during a period when you probably believed they were completely unaffected. They had been acting normally around everyone else. Laughing. Working. moving through their responsibilities. Nobody would have guessed anything was wrong. But later, when they were alone, they saw something connected to you. Perhaps an old photograph, a message, or something you once shared. They stared at it longer than they intended. Then they remembered your voice. And suddenly all the emotions they had been controlling came forward. They realized they missed not only talking to you but being known by you. There were things they wanted to tell you that they could not imagine explaining to anyone else. There were parts of their personality that seemed easier to reveal around you. And for the first time, they asked themselves honestly, why am I fighting so hard against someone who made me feel safe? They had no good answer. Fear was the answer. Pride was the answer. Past hurt was the answer. But none of those answers felt strong enough anymore. My child, that night they almost called you. They held their phone. They opened your contact. They imagined hearing your voice. Then fear whispered, what if they don't want to hear from you? They put the phone down. Minutes later they picked it up again. What if they're waiting? They put it down again. This happened several times until eventually they convinced themselves tomorrow would be easier. Tomorrow came. They remained silent. And that became one of the moments they regret most because now they understand that courage delayed repeatedly can eventually become an opportunity lost. Then came the recent conversation. Someone told them another person may be interested in you. Your soulmate's first reaction was jealousy, but that emotion quickly became something deeper. They asked themselves, what right do I have to be jealous when I never clearly told them what I wanted? That question humbled them. They realized you were free. Free to meet people. Free to choose someone who chooses you. Free to build a future without waiting for them to overcome fears they never explained. And my beloved child, instead of making them angry at you, this realization made them angry at themselves. Not destructive anger. The kind of frustration that says, enough. Enough hiding. Enough pretending. Enough waiting for a perfect moment. Enough expecting love to remain available while offering it no direction. Your soulmate decided that if they contacted you, they would not interfere with your freedom. They would not demand an answer. They would simply give you something they should have given you long ago. The truth. They returned to the message. I don't know whether there is still space in your life for this conversation. They typed slowly. But I need to stop pretending my silence meant I didn't feel anything. Then they added. I fell in love with you before I knew what to do with that feeling. They stopped. There it was. No hidden language. No clues. No escape route. Love. They continued. I became scared because you started mattering in ways I couldn't control. I know my fear may have made you feel rejected. You didn't deserve that. My beloved child, imagine the weight leaving their chest as those words appeared. But then they wrote something even more important. I am not telling you this because I expect you to wait for me. I am telling you because you deserve the truth. That sentence represented something new. For the first time, they were separating love from possession. They could love you and respect your choice. They could hope for another opportunity without believing they were entitled to one. They could become honest without demanding that honesty erase the past. This was growth. And yet your soulmate still had one question. Do you feel anything anymore? They were afraid to ask. Because if your answer was no, the fantasy could finally end. But they also understood something. Knowing the truth would hurt less than living indefinitely inside assumptions. So they added, if you're willing, I would like to know how you actually feel now. Not how you felt months ago. Now. Their thumb hovered over send. Then something stopped them. They remembered what the person had said. Someone else may be interested in you. For a second, fear returned. Maybe contacting you now would appear selfish. Maybe you were finally happy. Maybe their confession would only create confusion. My child, they almost deleted everything again. Then another thought arrived. Honesty does not require manipulation. They could speak without asking you to choose immediately. They could respect whatever reality existed in your life. They did not need to compete with anyone. They simply needed to stop hiding. And so they pressed send. The message disappeared from the text box. Delivered. Your soulmate stared at the screen. Suddenly every second felt enormous. They walked away from the phone. Returned. Checked again. Nothing. They tried distracting themselves. Impossible. 5 minutes passed. 10. 20. Their mind began producing every worst-case scenario. You waited too long. They don't care anymore. They're with someone else. They read the preview and don't want to answer. But then the status changed. Seen. My beloved child, their heart seemed to stop. You had read everything. The words they had hidden for so long were finally in front of you. There was no taking them back. Your soulmate waited. Nothing. 1 minute. 2. 5. They began understanding something you may have experienced many times. Waiting without knowing. Suddenly they felt what uncertainty had felt like from your side. They wanted an immediate answer, but then they stopped themselves. No, they thought. They deserve time. That was another change. The old version of your soulmate might have interpreted your delay as rejection. This version understood that you had emotions to process too. Then the typing indicator appeared. 3 dots. Their entire attention locked onto the screen. The dots disappeared. Returned. Disappeared again. You were struggling with your response. Finally, a message arrived. Your soulmate opened it. The first words were not what they expected. You did not say, I knew it. You did not say, I love you too. You said, I wish you had told me this when I was still waiting to hear it. My child, those words hit them deeply. Because hidden inside that sentence was confirmation. There had been a time when you wanted this confession. A time when hearing, I love you, might have changed everything. And they missed that moment. Your soulmate stared at your words. Regret rose immediately, but they knew this was not the time to make you comfort them. They typed, "I wish I had too." Then another sentence. "I understand if things have changed." They hesitated. "But if you're willing, I would still like to talk, not to pressure you, just to finally be honest." They sent it. This time your response came faster. "You hurt me." 3 words. No drama. No accusation. Just truth. Your soulmate closed their eyes. They could have defended themselves. They could have explained their fear again. Instead they wrote, "I know. Then. And I am sorry. My beloved child, something important happened in that moment." Your soulmate stopped trying to convince you that because their intentions were loving, your pain should disappear. They allowed both truths to exist at once. They loved you. And they hurt you. One truth did not erase the other. Your response came. "I spent a long time thinking I wasn't enough for you." Your soulmate's eyes remained fixed on that sentence. That was the thing they had feared most. Their silence had become a story about your worth. They immediately wrote, "You were never the problem." Then they stopped. Deleted it. Because it sounded too simple. They tried again. "My inability to communicate was not a measure of your worth. I should never have left you to interpret it that way." They sent it. Silence again. Then you asked the question they knew was coming. "Why now?" My beloved child, your soulmate stared at those words because the answer mattered. They could not say it was because someone else might want you. That was only the final push, not the reason. They could not say it was loneliness. That was not enough. They needed to explain what truly changed. They typed, "Because I finally realized I was waiting to become fearless, and that day was never going to come. I am still afraid. I just don't want fear making my choices anymore." They sent it. Your soulmate waited. Then your response appeared. "What exactly are you asking me for?" And suddenly everything became real. This was the moment. No more abstract feelings. No more romantic confession without direction. What did they actually want? Your soulmate looked away from the phone. They thought carefully. Did they want a relationship immediately? A conversation? Forgiveness? Another chance? They realized that rushing to define everything would repeat another kind of mistake. So they answered honestly. "One conversation. That's all I'm asking for right now. A real one. No disappearing, no pretending, no half-truths." Your response did not come immediately. Minutes passed. Then the typing indicator appeared. Your soulmate held their breath. You wrote, "I'll think about it." That was all. Not yes. Not no. "I'll think about it." And my child, for the first time, your soulmate did something different. They did not send 5 more messages. They did not demand reassurance. They did not ask how long you needed. They simply wrote, "Take whatever time you need." Then they put the phone down. But something happened later that night. A message arrived. Your name appeared again. Your soulmate opened it immediately. You had written only one sentence. Before I agree to talk, there is something you need to know about why I really walked away. Your soulmate froze. Because they thought they finally understood why you became distant. They believed it was simply their inconsistency. Their silence. Their fear. But your message suggested there was something else. Something they did not know. They typed. What happened? Your reply began appearing. 3 dots. Then disappeared. Returned. And finally your message came through. Your soulmate read the first line and their expression changed completely. Because the truth was not only about what they had done. Someone else had been involved. Someone had told you something about your soulmate during the period when everything between you began falling apart. Something you believed. Something that made you question whether their feelings had ever been genuine. And your soulmate had absolutely no idea anyone had said it. My beloved child, they stared at your message in disbelief. Then they asked you one question. Who told you that? And when your answer appeared on their screen, your soulmate recognized the name immediately. That was when they realized your separation may not have happened only because of fear and silence. Someone had been standing much closer to this connection than either of you understood. And now the truth about what that person had done was finally beginning to come out.